This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is brought to you by our friends over at the Atlantic Farms Medical Marijuana Dispensary of Portland, Maine, which is located right down the street from where I live and is known as being the medical cannabis dispensary that is also a gas station where you can fill up your tank alongside getting medical marijuana products. Check them out over at theatlanticfarms.com. That's theatlanticfarms.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Friday, January 22nd, 2021, and you're tuned in to episode 1013 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. We head to New York State to start the day of news as Governor Andrew Cuomo released late Tuesday night the actual legislative language for this year's budget proposal where he wants to see legal adult use cannabis rolled out. We reported on this storyline earlier on Tuesday, but that was before Cuomo's office put out the actual budget proposal. Kyle Yeager has a good and detailed write-up on this over at Marijuana Moment that is worthy of a full read, but in short, Governor Cuomo's plan would create an adult use sales program built around an 18% sales tax run by non-vertically integrated companies. The proposal includes programs for the automatic expungement of past marijuana crimes and would divert a certain amount of tax revenue towards social justice and equity programs. Unfortunately, it would not allow for Homegrow and it does not explicitly allow for delivery, but it does give regulators flexibility to later add in delivery licenses. So that's nice. Pop over to Marijuana Moment for the full dive in on details here. As we always do, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com. A group of marijuana dispensaries in Massachusetts is suing the state to overturn a legal cannabis regulation that restricts access to legal marijuana delivery business licenses for the next 3 years to participants in the state's social equity program. The Commonwealth Dispensary Association's members are upset that they will be barred from getting delivery licenses themselves and contend that the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission did not have enough sitting members at its November meeting when the policy was approved. The decision to carve out delivery licenses for social equity program participants is widely seen as a great way to give opportunity to people to build businesses within the industry without having to have all the financial capital required to open brick-and-mortar dispensaries. So there's a lot of criticism rightly being thrown upon the Commonwealth Dispensary Association for this lawsuit. We end the top set of headlines today with a large fundraising story as Canadian marijuana giant Aurora Cannabis just raised around $125 million US in funding through the sale of 12 million units, which each carry a common share of Aurora alongside a warrant to buy another half share. The deal will close in the middle of next week, and the money raised will be used by Aurora for general corporate purposes. This is a top story today because it's a very nice sign to see a $125 million funding event happen right now. Those are the top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz it in headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, the Atlantic Farms Medical Marijuana Dispensary of Portland, Maine, which is located right down the street from where I live and is known as being the medical cannabis dispensary that is also a gas station, where you can fill up your tank alongside getting medical marijuana products. I've become friends with the people working to make the Atlantic Farms everything it can be and can personally attest to the fact that they really care about doing right for their patient customers, which explains why they have so many dedicated and passionate customers. When you open up the Atlantic Farms menu, you are presented with a wide swath of top quality, Maine-grown medical marijuana products, all available at incredibly affordable prices. If you need flower, they have it. If you need concentrates, they have that too, or topicals, edibles, oils, vapes, and tinctures. Don't take my word for it though. Open up theatlanticfarms.com to see for yourself and to get your order in ahead of your visit, because the Atlantic Farms is open right now for curbside pickup only. One more time, that's theatlanticfarms.com. Big thanks to everyone over at The Atlantic Farms for the support that helps us keep the news lights on. All right, time for the Blitz. We launch back into the news cycle with another large round of fundraising up in Canada, though this time it's by a U.S.-based company, multi-state operator Verano Holdings of Illinois, which pulled in $100 million in funding via a reverse takeover deal on the Canadian Securities Exchange. The deal, which was initially expected to bring in $50 to $100 million, will close in February. With one more investment headline today, California-based Harborside is raising just over $21 million US in funding via a private placement up in Canada. As Deborah Borchardt has it in her story on this, Harborside has lately made a few big changes to its ranks at the top, with COO Greg Sutton leaving the company last week, following the departure of company co-founder Steve D'Angelo last month. Matt Lamers over Marijuana Business Daily covers a really important storyline up in Canada revolving around the supply glut that is steadily being built up by the nation's legal marijuana companies. We've been following this one for a while now, as each month sees the added accumulation of unsold legal Canadian cannabis products, and as of Matt's check-in here, it's only gotten worse. Right now, a record 1 million kilograms, or a touch over 2.2 million pounds, of unsold cannabis products are being held in inventory right now in Canada, following a rush of new inventory added after last fall's harvest. There's a lot to unpack with this storyline, so swing on over to give it a read if you are at all involved with the Canadian market. The Valens Company is perhaps feeling some of that supply glut in the Canadian market, as it just announced that it has sold off the bulk of its cannabis oil inventory at rock bottom prices. Valens will take a one-time charge to their books for the fourth quarter of 2020 of around $3 million as a result of the oil sale, part of a larger $10 million write-down. Kyle's back with a nice story out of Illinois, where yesterday state officials announced that $31.5 million in grants would be given out to communities hit most hard by the war on marijuana via marijuana business tax revenue. Illinois' Restore, Reinvent, and Renew program carves out 25% of adult use tax revenue to fund programs like community reinvestment and legal aid. In this round of funding, 80 different organizations are to be given grants out of a touch under 400 that applied. This is one of those stories that we need to see more of everywhere. Give this one a read. Ben Adlin takes us out to Washington State, where last week a legislative hearing was held over the issue of allowing adults of age to grow cannabis at home. Washington State was a pioneer in the fight for legal cannabis, passing an adult use legalization ballot measure back in 2012, but it has not so far allowed for Homegrow. That might have made some sense in 2012's political environment, but hardly holds water today, and activists in the state have been pushing for reform. A new bill to allow Homegrow, HB 1019, is currently being considered by Washington state lawmakers and saw some time last Friday with the House Commerce and Gaming Committee, which is chaired by the bill's sponsor, Representative Shelley Kloba. This is an interesting story worthy of a full dive in, no matter where you do business. Swing on over. John Schroyer closes out the day and the week's news with a happier story over at Green Entrepreneur, looking at the relatively minor damage seen to California, Washington, and Oregon's legal marijuana industry by the massive wildfires that swept the West during the spring, summer, and fall. While there were plenty of companies that did see their business operations hit by the wildfire, the general consensus seems to be that it was not as bad as it could have been. One of the things that cannabis farmers were worried about was smoke and ash fallout from wildfires hitting their crops and tainting them enough to fail testing, but that did not seem to widely manifest. I think the biggest takeaway from 2020 in general is to hope for the best, but to plan for the worst. So if you operate out west and are in any kind of danger from eventual fire, make sure you have a plan to mitigate and react. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again on Tuesday with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Atlantic Farms, and to our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.